Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. My first Palm Symposium. I'm Bruno de Medeiros. I'm currently postdoc at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute. And next year, in September 2022, I'll be starting as the assistant curator in pollination biology at the Field Museum in Chicago. So I'll be looking for postdocs and graduate students. If you're interested, you can reach out. My contact information is at the bottom of this slide, and I'll show it again in the last slide of this presentation. I'd like to start by defining what is a brood pollinator. So in the narrow sense, which is the one I will adopt here, those are insects that both pollinate plants and breed on the seeds that result from that very same pollination. There are only a handful cases across insects that are known and well described, even though I think there are many more out there that we are unaware of. And the one case that's really widely known is that of figs and fig wasps. So figs depend exclusively on fig wasps or their pollination. Fig wasps depend exclusively on figs to complete their life cycle. Wasps enter a fig, which is an inflorescence, an enclosed inflorescence, and pollinate flowers within a fig, laying eggs in some of those flowers that will develop into new wasps instead of seeds. And the offspring of these wasps will take away the pollen that will be used to pollinate the next figs. This is a really a really tight system in which there is mutual interdependence. And in this system and others of brood pollination, it seems that plants are in control. So they can reward good pollinators, they can punish too much seed consumption or bad pollination. And so the interaction ends up being a mutualism. Today I will be talking about how I used insect-focused natural history studies on palm flower visitors to find a group of brood pollinators in palms together with other interactions that are relevant for palm flowers. And then I'll briefly talk about my ongoing study on the evolution of how brood pollination can evolve in palm inflorescences, which are very unlike figs. They are broadly open, any insect can access them. They are very diverse in terms of flower visitors, and also, as I'll talk about later in the talk, have many other differences to figs. So how can this evolve under those conditions? What I will not be talking about today, but there is a line in the abstract, is about insect diversification. And for that, since I first submitted this abstract, this came out as a paper, which is pasted here. So you can check it out and reach me later if you're interested in that aspect. So let's start by natural history. There is a diversity of interactions that come about from herbivory, from insects feeding on plants. So we often think about the bad guys, so antagonists that may suck plant sap, destroy seeds, or destroy or chew live plant tissues such as leaves. But there's a lot more to it. Some insects may be commensals feeding on that plant tissue and really having no negative impact on plant fitness, and some might even engage into mutualisms, such as defensive mutualisms, in the case of some ants, or pollination mutualisms, which is what we'll be talking about today. And because of their size and complexity, palm inflorescences end up being the site of many of these interactions. I've observed that in the Licuri palm. It's a specialist on seasonally dry tropical forests found in northeastern Brazil. So the biome is shown here in this map by in the orange area, and the black dots are records where the species has been collected, including by myself. Throughout its range, the Licuri interacts in its flowers, we can find a very diverse community of insects, many of them quite abundant throughout its range. And there are two questions that I wanted to know to understand interactions between those insects and this palm. First, whether adults of each species are pollinators, and second, which tissue are their larvae feeding on. To find out which ones are pollinators, this palm is protandrous, so male flowers open first, and there's a period when there's a resting phase when nothing is happening more or less of a week, and when flower visitors leave the inflorescence, and only a subset of them can also be found during the female flowering stage. So this plays out throughout more or less 3 weeks. And the first thing that in this floral biology is also found in some other palm genera, particularly the ones I'll be talking about later today in this talk. The first thing we can do is sample insects in the different flowering stages and see which ones are found both in males and female flowers. And we can do the sample by bagging whole inflorescences and retrieving everything that's there. I'm not sure if you can hear this on Zoom, but there's the sound, it sounds like rain, but it's really all of the thousands of insects that were in this inflorescence moving in this bag. And then we can sort all of those insects, count them, and identify them to species. And what we're looking for are the insect species that are abundant enough and frequent enough, both in male and female flowers, so that connect both male and female flowers. I'll show these connections as an interaction network in which different flowering stages at different times of the day are nodes. And it's a complicated graph, but what's important here is that only a subset of the other nodes, which are insects, only a subset of them connects both male and female flowers. And even smaller subset really is found at really high frequency in female flowers. And those are the only species that can possibly be pollinators. We add to that by doing direct observations at flowers. And in this case, we can get information about the behavior as well. So some species do touch stigma, such as this stingless bee and this weevil, the Anchylorhynchus weevil, laying an egg in this flower while it touches the stigmas of the flower, while others do not have the compatible behavior to be good pollinators. This also gets us frequency of visitation to female flowers and samples to extract pollen and count pollen in their bodies. Now, to that information, we need to add which tissues are the larvae feeding on, and there are many possibilities. So again, those inflorescences are complex environments, and insects are exploring them in different ways. I look at it, I search larvae in the different tissues, and also for observed oviposition in adults. And then I used CO1 barcodes, so DNA barcodes, to match larvae in adults. And I found the breeding sites of many of all of the common species in those inflorescences. And so to summarize, we can get all of those species that are found throughout the range of the Licuri palm and sort them along those two axes, which ones are pollinators, which ones are not, and which ones breed on live plant tissue and on decaying plant tissue. And now I'll focus only on a subset of the pollinators. Those are Anchylorhynchus weevils in the genus Anchylorhynchus, because they are the ones that are brood pollinators. They're both effective pollinators of many of the palms that have been studied so far, and develop on plant seeds. So it's a really good system to study evolution of brood pollination. Well, first, because it's quite diverse. So there are currently 25 species of Anchylorhynchus known in the Neotropics. There are 5 or 6 more that I'm working on describing right now. And they interact with about 35 species of palms in 4 different genera. The adults visit male flowers to feed on pollen, and they visit female flowers to lay eggs. And those eggs, they are laid externally between petals and sepals of those flowers, and they hatch into those killer larvae, so the cannibal larvae that eat each other, and then when there's just one remaining, they start to drill at the base of the fruit and cause fruit abortion and finally complete their development. So one of the questions we can ask, is this a mutualism? So what's the net effect? Is the net effect positive for the plant? And how can palms control the system? So the flowers are visited by many insects. Each fruit only produces one seed, so each pollination event can either lead to a seed or a weevil, but never both, which is unlike other systems in which palms can sanction pollinators that eat too many seeds. And why rely on bird pollinators when those flowers are exposed to all other species in the environment? But so there are all species that seem less costly, and they are available, both beetles and bees. And finally, which contexts move this interaction throughout the mutualism antagonism spectrum? And palms are a really rich system to ask this question, more than figs, for example, because there is variation. So like I said, there are 4 different palm genera interacting with those weevils. And even though we still need to learn a lot more about the details of pollination of these plants, it looks like some of them are more dependent on weevils, while others can rely more on bees. So a really rich system with different contexts. I'm using pollinator exclusion experiments here in Panama to gather those questions. Here's a snapshot of the kinds of flower visitors that we can find in Oenocarpus mapora, the local Oenocarpus species. And this is ongoing work. There'll be a lot more to say by the end of the next flowering season. But so far, it seems that in this case, palms are in control. Unlike what I observed for other species of palms before, flowers, female flowers actually aborted before the eggs hatch. So it's not the larvae that are causing fruit abortion. And the egg development happens faster in aborted flowers. So it seems that plants can prevent development of larvae when they do not abort a pistillate flower. And I would just show one of the findings, preliminary findings that I have so far, which is that there seems to be spatial variation in inflorescences as to whether they selectively abort flowers with eggs or without eggs. So at the base, so this is in each one of these graphs, I'm comparing branches right after flowering and 10 days later. And I'm looking at the fraction of flowers that are retained by the plant and have eggs. So at the base, they increase, which means that the plants aborted mainly flowers without eggs. But at the apex, they decrease, meaning that plants aborted mainly flowers with eggs. So there seems to be spatial allocation. So to summarize, pollinating seed predators have evolved in neotropical palms. They started interacting at least 4 times independently with different palm genera. All cases are within diverse flower visitor communities with both the bees and beetles. In some cases, one or other kind of species being more important. And it seems so far that those palms that I'm studying right now that are as baseline, those that should be most dependent on weevils, are in control of the interaction. With that, I would like to thank my funding sources, my collaborators, the people who helped me with data and information about palms, and the symposium organizers. And I'm happy to take any questions.